All right. So, a
Okay.
very, very warm welcome to you, Mansi. Welcome to Cool Kanya.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Just a little bit of introduction for everybody, for our very special guest here. So, we have Mansi Zaveri with us today. She is the founder and CEO of Kids Stop Press. It's a one-stop shop destination for everything to do with parenting and childcare. And she's had an illustrious experience in the field of marketing with FMCG goods and a lot of other brand building stuff. And she's managed to channel all of this expertise and experience into building this very, very niche and unique business. And that's precisely my first question to you. Where did you get the idea to start? Where did it all start? And
Yeah,
how?
yeah. It's a very simple story, but two sort of interjections that kind of drove me to do this. So one was, I've had a marketing career and being in digital marketing for over 15, 18 years before I actually took the plunge into starting out on my own. But the first step was, I was driving. My office used to be at Metro, and I live at Worli. And I was driving from Metro to Worli, and this was around 2010 or something. And my daughter was about 2 years of age, and I was like, we're constantly spending, at least about 60 to 70% of our waking up time on a digital device. And why are we not communicating as much? And this time according and good were, and those were the old BlackBerry days, right? And I was like, why are we still not communicating in this fashion, right? Because essentially your BlackBerry Messenger back in the day would only mean that, you have these closed BBM groups, and like only few select people could text you and things like that. And Facebook was just about gaining traction in 2008 to 2010, right? So I was like, there has to be a way that people start communicating in this fashion. So that was it, because when I was driving from Metro to Worli, I did not even look up once. So what I had done effectively was I had cut out all the noise that was print ads, billboards, radio, everything, and I was glued onto that BlackBerry phone that time. So I was like, so that was one whisper. And I truly believe that, life keeps sending us these whispers until they become loud noises, um, or loud conversations, not really noises, but they really become loud conversations which you should start engaging with. So that was one. And then in 2011, I actually was so bored of I wasn't bored, but I was like, after you reach a certain point in your career, designations keep changing, but essentially what you're doing still remains the same, right? So your designation can
Yes.
change from VP, head of marketing to VP to director, director to something else. Like the titles can get fancier, but your job profile pretty much stays the same. So I was like, if I have to really challenge myself, I don't know if I want to keep climbing this rat race or running in this rat race, because if you're running in a rat race, you're still a rat, right? So that was the point, and I decided to take a 6-month break because my sister was moving back from the US, and I said, she said, just come, let's backpack for 6 months with both our kids, and let's do it. So I said, okay, and I took a sabbatical for 6 months. I traveled with my daughter alone to the US for 6 months, and every city that we went to, we kind of planned what to do in that city by ourselves. And that's the time it struck me that, wow, this is so cool. Imagine if I could do this in India. Like sitting at my desk, figure out where can I go? What are the places to travel? What can I do? Everything was just so scattered as information, or just floating as BlackBerry messages and things like that. But there was no concrete file to it. And that was it. I came back, quit my job, and end of 2011 I quit. 2012 I started Kids Stop Press in the beta version. We were testing it and all of that, and that's it. I didn't give myself any time, to starting out, to coming up with the idea, to kind of saying, okay, this is what I want to do. I just gave my time, a lot of time for research and understanding the consumer, but that was about it. I didn't deliberate over it too much, whether it'll be successful or not so successful. I know a lot of people ask this question, but I don't have an answer to any entrepreneur starting out with a success formula in hand.
I think there is one per se. I mean, you just have to deep dive in. There
Yes.
is no other way.
Yes.
Absolutely. which is that's pretty amazing actually, and I would love to know more about that backpacking trip. Honestly, it sounds like a big adventure. So,
With a
moving
two and
on to
a half
that,
year old,
when you,
yes, it was a big adventure.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. I mean, they have their own needs, and I'm sure you operate in the business. You're aware of, all the whims and fancies of a 2.5 year old.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. So, moving on. So you took the plunge and you started the beta version. My next question to you is, because at the time, 2011 was when you mentioned, there were all of these so many entrepreneurs, so many businesses coming up, and it's very difficult to maintain that, maintain your unique brand voice in that, and especially, identifying an audience it's always such a hassle to do that. So for you, for Kidstop Press, how did you identify your audience? How did you identify that niche for your brand?
That is such an interesting question. And, a lot of people have actually kind of asked that how did one we create that niche? And the second was how did we maintain it? But because one is to create it, the other is to maintain it, right? And, and that's something that I teach in the courses that I do for women entrepreneurs on digital strategy and marketing is how do you define your brand strategy, right? And it's live on Kidstop Press, and we're doing a live Q&A today at 5 in case anybody wants to join in. What essentially is the mantra to that is you identify 5 or 6 buckets that you want your brand to stand for, right? And for me, that essentially came from a lot of research and from a very personal experience as well in understanding my consumer. And I understood that my consumer is somebody who is, trust plays a very, very important role because we realized earlier on in our research that a parent trusts nobody else as much as they trust another parent in whatever decision making that they do, right? Second was that they needed, so trust was a very important factor. The second was in understanding that there were so many international platforms available, but India's cultural, social, physical landscape for baby raising was very different, right? So understanding your local cultural nuances, like in the US, they would first, or Western world, they would first feed applesauce to their kids at 6 months, and we would feed dal ka pani, right? So be very intuitive about your consumer to understand what are you literally need to live, eat, breathe, sleep your consumer's life, and understand at every aspect what is at every touch point of his life, how are you causing an impact there, right? Third is create a sort of reason for being for your brand, right? So example, ours was like we want to be trusted, we want to be a discover. People said that again when we did research, they said it's very hard to discover something new for kids because they don't know where to find that. So for me, it was about being that discovery platform. Then the parenting space was so wide, right from conception all the way till your kids are about 10 years of age, right? So there were so many milestones, and especially in the parenting category, milestones are very, very significant, right? From the time you decide to start a family till your child is born, there are memories which can never be erased. And if you ask anybody who's ever had a child, what's the happiest moment of your life? They will always say, at least 99% will say, the birth of my child. So how are you capitalizing on those milestones, right? That was a very important aspect. And the last is own something, not everything, right? So I think that's very important because as entrepreneurs we try to do so many things, or as brand owners we try to do so many things, and we forget what do we actually stand for. So having said all of these, the reason I said this is I've literally dissected our brand statement, which is Kidstop Press is a trusted discovery platform for parents through every single milestone in their journey, right? So everything that was important to our consumer, we've kind of put it out there in our, in our vision statement, and that helps you evoke. Everything will evoke brand emotions from there. So everything that we do has to be from a voice of trust, right? That's how you become a leader in the space, right? You create for your consumer because you know they trust you. So you do that. When you talk of milestones, you talk of things that are topical, right? Or things like, for example, today, I know at the 8 p.m. We have these slots for Instagram, and I know that's something that's very topical, and how we putting the parenting filter on it. So we are not going to, marketing moments cannot be repurposed without your audience filter on it, right? Make your brand so relatable, and that's coming back to own your consumer's life. I tell every single business owner, please understand, you're not selling a product, you always sell a lifestyle, because selling products is passe, right? Telling people that, oh, you're gonna get beautiful, this product makes you like, say, thin and whatever, it's not gonna work. But if your transformation is much larger, makes you feel fitter and 10 times stronger or something like that, it'll be so much easier to kind of convince the user that you need it in their lifestyle, integrated into their lifestyle, actually.
Now that was very insightful, actually, and very you've deconstructed the whole mission statement at this point, which is a lot of entrepreneurs fail to sort of master right at the initial stages of their operations. Which is what my next question to you is. I mean, as a space, parenting, as you rightly mentioned, it's so wide. There are so many aspects to it. There are so many different styles involved in this. And owing to all of this, this vast, diverse spectrum of parenting, there's also a lot of competition, right? You have so many different other brands, let's say, or you have so many other different corporations which are sort of trying to make parenting easy in so many different ways. So in your incorporation of delving deep into all of these filters that you spoke about, how did managing competition come into play? How do you manage competition at Kidstop Press?
So first up, I always feel like I feel there's scope for so many people. We're talking of 30 million babies being born every single year in this country. We're talking of a population where a large part of the population in the country is under 25 years, right? We're talking of a milestone in a person's life, which is like at least 85% people will go through that milestone, right? At least in India. So we have actually room for so many people. That's one. Second is, competition always is a great way to is a great way to keep you on your toes, right? But always define your competition very very in a way, very, very carefully. Like for me, my biggest competition was not another platform or was not another influencer. My biggest competition was WhatsApp, because I knew that it was so integral to the parenting ecosystem, that how do I get that mother to come to my platform and not go on to WhatsApp? So example, if she was to discover a local chess class, how does she not go to her building WhatsApp group and come to Kidstop Press, right? That was my challenge. So, and that helped me understand that, okay, and then you take that competition in your stride and say, how can I make this competition work for me, right? So then you can say that, okay, I've got this problem. How do I flip it over and say, I use that platform to actually work? So can you start seeding messages onto WhatsApp? Can you get people who are really active onto WhatsApp to contribute back onto your platform, right? So you actually use competition, flip it over in your favor. And the third thing I would say is that, when you've crafted a very, very strong niche for who you are, and I can say this because, as a platform, we've survived and thrived over the last 7 years simply because we very closely defined our niche, right? So if a brand or a consumer or our readers want to connect with somebody who's educated, discerning, involved in their child's growth, is somebody who's who's an evolved parent, not only from an economic strata perspective, but mentally an evolved parent, they will consider Kidstop Press, right? In so many plans, you will be at the top when they are considering platforms or media vehicles to choose for their brand, simply because your brand stands for something, right? Which I think is very important for every brand to identify. What does your brand stand for? Because then there will be some plans which you will always be part of, because your audience resonates so well with that brand. And there might be some which you may not be part of, which is okay, because that also means that your brand imprint is so well etched in the brand manager's mind that he thinks no, Kids Stop Press will not fit into it. So at least you stand for something. So I think that is a fourth aspect of competition. And the fifth is, I always take this example of Priyanka Chopra. I'm a big fan of hers. And I just feel like, while everybody was pitting her against another Bollywood actress, what did she go and do? She went and created a whole different universe of competition, right? So I just feel like, why am I competing with only like Indian brands or Indian influencers or whoever, right? I have the world to work with. So why am I thinking, or why am I going to restrict my thought process to saying that, okay, I'm only competing and this is my competition universe? No, not really. That today the audience is spending time on so many different platforms that they automatically become a competition that you need to convert to opportunity.
That's brilliant. I think that's a very interesting way to look at competition in itself, because there's for we talk about we talk about a lot about this, about how today in 2020 every idea that you think of, there's bound to be something already done in that sphere. There are no new ideas anymore, and I think that's a very interesting way to start looking at competition as something which you can rather leverage and not compete with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, we have a lot of, on Cool Kanya itself, we have a lot of these, we have a lot of women who are starting out their own businesses, who want to, venture into entrepreneurship. So if I were to ask you, let's say, your personal 5 takeaways on, let's say, identifying an audience and starting to build a brand, what are your quick, easy personal takeaways for that?
Starting out a brand, like I always say, that have a very strong reason on why you're starting out. Identify that need gap first, right? And I personally believe, and I could be wrong, but I always believe that founders who experience that need gap can fill it much better than founders who've not experienced it. I don't know. It's just a bias maybe that I have, but I feel that
I think it's more. Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's more about empathy.
Like, I don't think it's empathy, but you must have started this because you felt a very strong need gap for something, right? And when you start something out of a need, it becomes a crazy passion, and then that passion becomes a business, right? So I think that is very important. Understand your why very strongly. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you want to start this? And what problem are you solving? That's number one. Second is, which I think is very, very important, is to kind of define your voice, right? Which we spoke of what do you stand for, right? Which I think is, again, very important, because that will help you guide through everything that you're doing, right? So who's my consumer? How do I do it? What will my colors be? What will my logo be? What will the name of the brand be? Like, drafting your brand strategy. And I think that's so much in detail that it's very interesting. It's a very vast topic in itself, but I think that should be your step number 2. Step number 3 is, don't overthink it. If you feel it, do it, right? Because I think there's so many dreams and so many startups that are just nipped in the bud just at the start phase and the fear phase, right? Like, people just say, like, oh my God, what if I'm unsuccessful? Oh my God, what if I fail? Oh my God, what if this? Don't overthink it, because I think when you overthink the process, you kind of lose the intuitiveness of of a concept, right? You lose the excitement, you lose that vibe and that gut. And I think entrepreneurs are very, very intuitive. Like, sometimes I call my tech person and I feel like, these results are not seeming right. It could just be my gut feeling, but I think you should check this out. And my tech person will be like, Mansi, your gut is so damn right that I better check it, right? And he's like, founder's gut is always right. So always go with that vibe, because it always works. Number 4, I would say, is blinkers on, and there's a huge gap between a thinker and a doer, right? An entrepreneur really needs to be both. There are so many people who think. And again, when we talk of competition, sochte sab hai, karte bahut kam log hai. So bridge that gap between a thinker and a doer, because you know, it's like everybody comes up with really cool ideas, but execution is hard. Like, you need to really have the grit, the passion, the, I don't know what are the other words, but just the ability to put your head down and keep walking that path, right? And the perseverance of just being at it at the same pace for like ever, right? Entrepreneurship cannot be a sprint. It has to be a marathon. So if you are ready for it, just stick around. And the fifth part, I think, is just learn. Like, you have to, and I say learn because you constantly need to keep evolving, tweaking. So if you don't have that ability to adapt and tweak, then it's going to be tough for you to be an entrepreneur, because yeah, we just are never happy people, you know. We are constantly wanting to do,
Absolutely.
and there's just so
Absolutely.
much we could do that
Bilkul.
that I think if you're not agile, it might just get hard for you.
Guys, I see a lot of thumbs up, a lot of positive affirmations here. So just keep rolling in your questions as well if you have any. I'll keep taking them up through the course of the conversation. Just feel free to put down your questions. All right. Coming back to this, Mansi, I'm glad you mentioned the whole process of being agile and being adaptive. Because one thing when I was trying to sort of do my own research for this live, I came across one thing that really struck me personally was how in terms of your brand, you have a website, you have custom curated content, you have meal plans, you have guides, you have podcasts, you have videos, and work to disseminate that brand voice. You can hit the nail on the head on one platform, and there are times when you lose out on other, let's say, platforms or other audiences. So how does this 360-degree approach work for you,
You know,
and how do you
I
sort of
would say for,
work into
yeah,
it?
I would say that, it's a very interesting observation, by the way. But I definitely feel that today's customer, and for anybody who's building a customer facing business, you need to be where your customer is, right? And you also need to know where your customer is not. And again, I keep saying this, but we've done these over 25 modules on digital strategy and entrepreneurship for a lot of our readers and people, and we're currently, it's ongoing, and we're onboarding new members for this. And this is actually a module which is like an hour long, that we actually emphasize in the course, which is how do you know which is your platform, right? So make sure that you identify which are the touch points for your consumer. So I'll give you in my case, for Kidstop Press, we knew that our audience was first on Facebook. Search was very important. So website was my first landing page, because you need to understand all of social is
Yes.
a rented audience. You do not own your audience on social media. So hypothetically, what happened to TikTok, if it happens to any of the other platforms today, you don't own that audience. So start building your audience, start making sure that you are working on a platform or a page. It could be super easy, guys, something that you can even build on yourself, but make sure that you start collecting and knowing your consumer. So for me, building that website was point number one. Point number two was understanding social. So then you work on the distribution of your platforms, right? Now, distribution back in the day was Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and YouTube, right? Instagram didn't exist. So we said, okay, we want to do Pinterest because moms are on Pinterest. We want to do YouTube because video is big, and sometimes when we need to explain complicated games or things like that, it was much easier. And then we want to be on Twitter because Twitter was a big thing back in the day. And then that was literally it, right? We dropped out, or we deprioritized Twitter at some point in time, because we realized that's not where Indian moms are. We deprioritized Pinterest when we onboarded Instagram, because we started seeing that the Indian mom has migrated so much to Instagram, and she kind of, that's where the
Instagram.
brands are. That's a format you also need to enjoy. So guys, one is that you need to onboard it for your platform. As a brand, you need to enjoy that platform, right? So I can spend hours. If I did not have reminders on my phone, I could spend hours on Instagram. And so could my team. But having said that, deprioritize where you feel your audience is not present, right? So we dropped two, we picked up two. Then came podcast, because again we knew that video voice was going to be very, very important for our brand, and the way the digital economy was shaping us. So we said that we must onboard it. And like I said, you need to be constantly evolving. So if I map my consumer's day, I knew that he was struggling with the 5 p.m. meal plan, because my cook used to come and ask me, okay, bhabhi, kya banao? And I used to just cringe my head, like, dude, make whatever you want. Like, I am
Make whatever you want. The ever dreaded question. The ever dreaded question.
Right? I used to dread that question. And literally, it stemmed from a need. One was, I felt really guilty as a working mom that I didn't know what my kids were eating when I was away at work. So that was point number one. Point number two, every time I was in between a meeting or a call and she would come and ask me, what should I make? So I just scribbled a random meal plan in Hindi once while I was working. And before she would even come, to just slap it onto her face and say, bas, now this is not, don't bother me for a week, right? Sort of thing. And my team said that, there we go. We actually have an idea here, because if you're struggling with this, everybody else is also struggling with it. And we developed that to over today, where we actually published a book on it. And it's now becoming into an obsession for people, where if they don't get that meal plan in their inbox every Sunday, they're like, wow, what just happened? Like, where did this come from? And again, it was a
go now.
Yeah. And it was a great way for us connecting back to our consumer and knowing our customer preference, right? So that again, because it became into an email service then. We started a book club for kids. It's now an automated email service. So that for us is one top. If I were to sum it up, know your audience and where your audience is. Second is own your user, because that's how you will be able to understand and work on your product better. And third is constantly reach touch points which are popular, right? So example, podcasting, I was lucky that I had an early mover advantage in the web space while building my website and being one of the first ones. I need to continue to retain my early mover advantage across different mediums, right? So I think that is very key, that be agile, because you will pick up those threads early on then.
That's very interesting. So this was how you stepped into all of these, different spectrums. But if I come to the content side of it, as you mentioned, like it's you have an idea, and it is always, the whole aspect of retaining it is always much more difficult. So is there a sort of plan that works in place in terms of, is there like strategies or like devising platform specific content that goes out?
Absolutely. So what actually goes out in our newsletter is, those guys get it first, and then everybody else gets it much later. Also, we create content for every single platform, right? It might sound a little difficult, but your audience is very, very different on all platforms. So it could hypothetically, we've done a very interesting article on screen time, because right now all parents are talking about online education and how kids are, like for hours on the iPad and things like that. And it's very interesting because, that's the same piece that has been, created for long form, same that gets edited very differently for an Instagram and, gets into a creative form that's engaging and interesting. The third, it will get very differently manifested to a YouTube video, where you'll actually have a more human connection to the whole piece. And then, differently likewise for a podcast, because a podcast listener is far more alert than a person watching YouTube video, because you're using only one sense. So that sense is very heightened. So you need to understand the nuances of every platform and what works on a platform. And the same content could be repurposed, but has to be in many ways created for that platform.
Questions here that I'm going to take. So we have a question here that's asking, what is your targeting strategy?
What is my target? Okay, I can now see the question. My frame actually I thought would have just frozen at some point in time. Sorry, what's that question?
Targeting strategy.
Targeting strategy is very simple, which is the minute your Facebook status changes from single to married, we will start stalking you because we know accidents can happen. And literally anybody, especially in India, anybody who's married, you're already on the Kidstop Press target profiling. And every time, I know friends or celebrities or anybody who kind of say, hey, or they have like a baby announcement or pregnancy announcement, I always say welcome to Kidstop Press, right? Because that's where your journey begins. But honestly, literally, anybody who's married, literally is on our targeting, is our target audience. And all the way till their kids are about 8 to 10 years. We obviously understand that the first time parent is far more vulnerable. But what's very important is, and no matter which target group you're working for, is very critical that if your user benefits more, if they get more value out of what what they actually get or what they actually expect, they'll always keep coming back for more, right? So I think our targeting strategy is very simple. Serve, and that's what we do even on our platform. So the AI and machine learning actually understands the consumer behavior. So if you are a parent whose kid is 2 years of age, we understand your history. You like organic food, you are watching, or you're playing with wooden blocks or organic clothing or whatever. We actually show you more of that, right? Which content, which you will be, you will want to read or you will gravitate more towards. So I think owning that audience is very important. And targeting strategy, typically, I would say, we've kind of created playbooks for different markets that we operate in. So we know that now it's a plug and play model for every city that we roll out. We are read across 300 cities and currently serving locally in about 13 cities in the country. But honestly, if you understand your consumers' touch points, milestones, their behavior patterns, it's just much easier. And if you just keep your eyes and ears open, like I think entrepreneurs should be great observers.
We have another question here. How effective is a newsletter in attracting clients?
Oh, I can just go on and on about this because it's my favorite. It's my most favorite topic. And again, I think newsletter marketing in the country is so underrated. So let me give you two scenarios, right? When I started out and we started building our newsletter database, we had, and somewhere people believe that social will really reduce emails and newsletters and things like that. But people think about, I would say that, think about top 5 newsletters that you always open, right? And kind of analyze why you open them. And first, why did you give your email address? So if you are somebody who's looking at newsletter marketing in a big way, very simple steps. Look at 5 newsletters that you voluntarily signed up for. Look at 5 newsletters that you always open. And third, look at communication that attracted you in those newsletters, right? If you identify these 3, you will understand that that brand kind of connects much better and you will be able to draft your newsletter strategy better. So right from starting out to today, I think newsletters is a very, very underrated play because people feel that, once notifications, etc., have come by, people have stopped accessing newsletters. But we see as high as 18 to 25% open rates on our newsletters simply because we never outsource our newsletters. We'll communicate about a brand, but very editorially or within our content. It will never be an exclusive newsletter. We've never sold that, even if it was millions of dollars. We've never done that simply because you will not see the same open rates on your newsletters as you would see if it is an editorial voice coming through. Second most important is, guys, you need to own that audience, right? So one is you opt in, you get that newsletter database. After that, what? Right? You've never communicated to that person. And people more often connect to humans than to connect with anybody else. right? So that was very, very important in our case as well, where we needed to make sure that we constantly communicated back to the community, and what would that communication be. So I think it's such a personal way of communicating to your user, and it's such a private moment that newsletter marketing is really, really underrated. But just go for it, because you need to, any business owner today needs to own their audience.
That's amazing. We have another question here. What inspired you to begin Kidstop Press?
Oh, I just answered that like right up front. Maybe just once she saves it as an IGTV, you can like scroll back and watch that.
Yeah, please do, because absolutely, it was a very, very interesting anecdote right there. All right, so coming back to the questions here. So with this pandemic-induced lockdown, work culture just generally has changed, and entrepreneurs especially, a lot of entrepreneurs have suffered so much, and everything they've had to reconfigure their strategies, their planning, and especially for Kidstop Press, what I assume is there must have been a drastic change too, because your the lifestyles of your target audience especially has changed drastically. As you mentioned, kids are at home, parents are at home. This whole purview has sort of taken this immense paradigm shift. So, content wise and business wise, how did you sort of tackle these changes, and how did you, incorporate all of this into your goals or planning for Kidstop Press?
That's a really interesting question, because yes, entrepreneurs suffered. I suffered from, I wouldn't say suffer, I would say realign of a lot of aspects of life. So one, I had to rethink business. I had to rethink what to do with my kids, because they're going to be homebound. I had to rethink for myself. And I had to rethink as a family, right? There's just so many aspects, and I think we give the least importance to ourselves. And I keep telling this to entrepreneurs, mothers, women, especially. Please give yourself a lot more importance than you actually do, because you deserve a lot more. I tell you what we did, and this was something that we were kind of building or working towards. So Kidstop Press actually nurtures a large part of women entrepreneurs. And because we have this massive awards program that we run, which garners a digital reach of over 70 million, and we just concluded that in February. So a large part of women entrepreneurs actually come to Kidstop Press for that validation of I'm the best brand in, say, in organic clothing or baby care or diapers or personal care or whatever. And then we had, like, all of these businesses were also going to need support. So we started a lot of things, a lot of programs where we could support women entrepreneurs in a massive way. And that's why we started the digital entrepreneurship program that I spoke to you about, which is now live on Kidstop Press. So we were kind of slowly building for it. It was something that we had planned to launch end of the year, but we accelerated on it and put it into play as early as 1st of April. It started as a passion project to connect with a lot of women entrepreneurs, mom entrepreneurs, and say, how can we kind of combine forces and kind of work together to move into this. And for me especially, this was such an important project, because I feel that women, once they become moms, they kind of somewhere lose confidence, and it's taken us so many years to get women to lean in, right? Now to kind of say, okay, am I good enough? My business is going to suffer, whatever. It's going to take us, they're all leaning back, and then to get them back into building that business is going to be that much longer. So I was very clear that this needed help. The second thing that we did was, we realized that there were a whole bunch of educators who were teaching chess or dance or art or music or whatever, and there were a whole bunch of parents on the other side who wanted to keep their kids engaged. So we said, how can we provide that bridge or that platform where both of these forces can actually collaborate, right? So we actually built a trusted vocational platform where parents could actually consume all of these vocational courses for children on Kidstop Press, right? So all of these educators would also find a living. They would get the visibility that Kidstop Press offers, and all the parents can also access all of these courses. Here also, we kind of understood our consumer that, listen, they don't have time for endless Zoom calls and things like that, where they need to they don't have a laptop accessible or whatever. So we said you can always watch replays, and it's lifelong access to that class, right? So we built that vocational course into it very, very effectively. So I think it was a time to realign, but we were very lucky that we were already building for something that had to actually be pulled forward, and other plans had to be put on a back burner. But these two were like very, very important aspects that we had to pull forward. And it's done phenomenally well. In about 20 weeks of the lockdown, or being home, we've actually launched 36 plus courses for kids, and we've launched over 24 modules for digital entrepreneurship. So I think it's been an amazing progression in terms of, again, the forces or the kind of work that we wanted to do in that space.
Even brands in general, I think there was a lot of push and pull, and like pushing it forward or taking it back or just reconfiguring your entire voice for a lot of us. That was definitely the case. Okay, that's a very that's very insightful actually. I myself might have to think about it for a very long time to come. We have a question here. Can you tell us more about how you decided on building the team and having more people join in? So I think this is a question to do with your team and
Yeah.
how the content plays out and everything. So what's your
Yeah,
take like?
that's a very, team is always a very, very interesting question. A large part of my team is still same, even today. Like one of the first employees is still on with us today, and I think the biggest piece is I always hire people who are hungry and not are not heavy headed. Like I always hire for the vibe and the the hunger to learn, right? Because I feel everything else can be taught, but that hunger is something that people can't you can't build that drive into somebody.
Yeah.
Second is get team, get your team to, you need to work towards being a great role model for your team, right? If you are saying that, listen, I can't do this, or I'm not or I'm not learning, or I'm not growing, or you are demotivating or demoralizing, it can work backwards. So see if you are setting a good example for somebody. I always also feel that always appreciate people in public, and give feedback in private. I don't know if that's a very it's a very easy line, but sometimes even if one of my team members sends me something and it's very nice and I really appreciate it, I will type it on personal chat there, but I will go back to the team group and I'll say, hey, XYZ, this was a fabulous edit or whatever, right? So just remember that, always appreciate it.
People, yeah, a lot of people don't do that, and it's something which is very simple, right? It's compliments are one of the biggest motivating
Yeah,
factors, and we somehow forget to factor that in, right, in our
yeah.
daily day-to-day work routines. I think that's brilliant actually.
Yeah. And always make sure that your team is growing and learning, right? Because I just feel that no matter where they grow, wherever they go, or wherever, if they even might decide to leave you and go somewhere else, you've sent a product that you're proud of, right? I think that is very important. So I think, and you'll be surprised, I have, I've never posted about hiring on any job site or anything like that. It's always, every single hire has been somebody who's either DM'd me or met me on social or met me somewhere, and I've kind of hired that person simply because, if you are so strong on a platform, why are you not using that platform? Because that person already knows your brand so well. So use that platform to kind of, for somebody already who believes in your brand. And the only other advice I'll give on building your team is, if you feel that somebody is not right for your team culture, nip it in the bud. Because you always feel like, oh, I'll not be able to do without this person, or how will it be, or whatever, or the person is adding a lot of toxicity or whatever. Just nip it in the bud, because and every entrepreneur out there must read this book called The Hard Things About the Hard Things. He just talks about team culture so brilliantly that I think it's a brilliant read for every single entrepreneur out there. And if you love reading about more entrepreneurship books, then perhaps you should follow my Instagram feed, because I've always tagged all the books that I personally really recommend for entrepreneurs.
You guys know what to do if you're into reading about entrepreneurs. Next, we have a question here. Three things which helps in turning a simple page into a brand.
Oh my God, that's really tricky.
That is.
Yeah, okay. Now I'll give you guys a little bit of an exercise here to do. If and go and observe these pages, right? So one is, if you go on to my Instagram feed, you will see, if and I say that, Instagram is your new visiting card. I literally believe that. If you go on to my feed, and I want you to maybe do that exercise after this live is over. Don't do it now. I don't want you to exit the live, but do that, and then DM me 4 things that you think I stand for. Okay. And I'm not going to feed it into your heads already, but do that exercise. The reason I tell you to do that is because you will start seeing that there is a brand. There's a slow and steady process in building the brand, right? And if you can articulate those 3 or 4 things that just stand out of the 100 other posts that I've posted, I feel like I've done justice to building that brand, right? If I was to say that about Cool Kanya, I would say, first up, the name, right? It already, there's a very Indian vibe to the whole, and that's one of the reasons I also kind of reached out to them, and we kind of got talking on Instagram, which was, there was this Indian girl, very, very Indian chic vibe to it, right? So it kind of resonated. It spoke about so much of diversity. Like, I don't think any of the lives that they've done is with a similar kind of a person. Every single life, and I've seen most of them, they're very different. The talent is very different, very diverse, from very different backgrounds, right? So diversity stood out as a big way to me. Third was this awesome orange that kind of hits you, right? Another reason I see is that colors semiotically play such a strong role in the way we remember and think about yourself as remembering your favorite brand logos, right? Again, the color kind of just resonated so strong. So that's your brand identity, right? The other 2 were your brand characteristics, but the third was your brand identity. So kind of see if you can create that. When I was designing the kids, but I kind of designed it in that way. And today, no matter which logo you put next to ours, you will be able to read the Kidstop Press logo very distinctly, right? So make sure that you kind of create that brand structure, and you have to have consistency. I think the last piece is consistency. Like, one day you're talking about, one day supposing you're hypothetically a yoga brand, right? Or a wellness brand. One day you're suddenly talking about, you're suddenly talking about, I don't know, something that kind of really is inconsistent with what your 99
With
posts
your
are.
voice.
It'll kind of jar out, right? So I think that is very important. So keep your messaging consistent, and first up, identify those 4 buckets that you stand for, and I wait for all your DMs after this live.
Lovely, because you have completely managed to sum up what Cool Kanya it is that it stands for, and I'm glad that I'm definitely going to do that exercise on other brand pages when next time I do a research. That's something very interesting to look at. All right, my last question to you, Mansi, is what's next for Kidstop Press?
Again, guys, she's not a host, she's a trickster. Huh? I must tell you guys this. She's tricking me to answering all these questions which I have no answers to, and now
No idea.
no. But honestly, I feel like there's so much. We just started with our vocational course platform, so of course we're going to build that very strongly. We want to really work in the vocational education come technology space. So vocational edtech is a huge piece that we want to address this year and next year, most definitely. I think Kitsra Plus has become a very, very strong brand. We've launched our own set of merchandise, and there's so many other thoughts in the pipeline in that space, because we've managed, somebody very like just in a casual conversation, one of our offline meetups said, hey, I'm a Kidstop Press mom. And for 30 seconds, I was like, okay. And, so people identify, right? That's the strength of your community.
Yeah.
Or if somebody came and told you, hey, I'm cool Kanya, that will really.
In fact, that's the first thing that came to my mind, because all of our personalized DMs, the ones that really want to maybe pride into us for like a collaboration or like a DM. It's like it starts off with hi cool Kanyas, or like I am a cool Kanya. It's just it's the relatability that really works.
Right. So it's exactly that. So that is a huge space that we want to explore on how we can do more for our consumer. But I think the very immediate bit of it is focusing a lot on our vocational training, vocational education for both moms and for kids. That's like the one big thing that we want to focus at least for the next 1 to 2 years for sure.
This has been lovely, Mansi. I know for sure I have gained a lot of new insights which I never knew I could initially. And I think this is brilliant. There's a lot of information, a lot of things to think about, honestly. And guys, please put in your questions in the comments. We'll tag Mansi in the live, and maybe she can, take it forward. She can answer all of your questions.
I always reply to all my comments, guys. So please make sure that you do that. That's one big part of building your brand. Always be there for your consumer.
Absolutely. So, and Cool Kanya is also very active in responding to comments. So go ahead and we'll post the live in just a short span of a few seconds. So go ahead, put down all your questions. And it was lovely to have you, Mansi.
Thank you.
I think it was a lovely, lovely session. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.